Hi everybody and welcome to this latest edition of Conversation Aviation podcast from EASA Together for Safety. In case you don't know who I am, I'm John Franklin. I'm Head of Safety Promotion at EASA, and that will give the nice little signal that we can put my nameplate down there so everybody can see it. It'll be interesting depending on what order you watch the podcast in, because I've had a haircut and I've got a feeling that this might come out before one we did last week where my hair was considerably longer. So I'm sure you'll enjoy following my hair getting bigger and smaller every time we do a podcast. But anyway, less of my hair and more of the purpose of the podcast. So I've got a great guest, someone I've known for, trying to think, 12 plus years now. So I'm joined by Pascal Kremer from Luxair to talk about occurrence reporting and safety culture and those kinds of topics. So maybe Pascal, you start, maybe you could introduce yourself a little bit and who you are, what your background is and what you do at Luxair.
Yeah, so hi everybody. My name is Pascal Kremer. I'm the safety manager at Luxair at the moment. I started my career with Luxair as a co-pilot some 25 years ago. Became captain, simulator instructor. At the moment I'm type rated on the 737 and synthetic flight instructor, but not in active duty due to a medical issue. With Luxair, my interests in aviation took me to various roles. Basically starting off as a flight safety instructor, doing all the safety subjects, the pilot refresher courses, aircraft trainings, de-icing, low visibility operations and all of these courses. Became an auditor also for the DAQCP, the de-icing pool for IATA. Later on an investigator, flight data monitoring manager, became flight safety officer, and then as the industry moved on, we all became safety managers, and that's the post I still have nowadays. While I worked there, I did a lot of work with the industry, with John.
That's where we first started, with some of the EASA groups, but you do so much more than that as well, don't you?
So there were so many other groups. I started off with the Airline Pilots Association and IFALPA, then moved to the European Region Airlines Association, to whom I own a lot of my experience. I learned a lot with these guys. I was chair of the safety group there for about 10 years. And I'm at the moment chairing the Flight Safety Foundation's European Advisory Committee. And as John said, we do a lot of work in different committee work groups, initiatives, and so on with national authorities. We recently did some work with NASA, EASA, and so on and so on. So it's too much to name, but it's great fun.
And even kind of, I guess the first thing we did during COVID as well was dipped our kind of toes, so to speak, in the topic of well-being and things, an area particularly we'd not got so involved in collaborations before. But I think, equally that was kind of a really interesting and even broader collaboration than we'd done in the past, I think.
Absolutely.
So in terms of occurrence reporting then, we talk so much generally just to, it's easy to say, there's a reporting regulation and we have to report certain types of occurrences, and then you get into, as an organization, it's easy to get into then the process of we do the reporting and look, we've done the reporting, but it's at a practical level, it's so much more important than that in terms of how it feeds the safety system, and I guess particularly as an organization, the importance of that to feed organizational learning. And I know that's something you're really passionate about at Luxair, and something you do a lot with your reporting system in your organization. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit, and how you kind of, how that all fits together and how you use it.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think if you look at safety culture and reporting, both go hand in hand. The reporting, obviously, you get reports from all of your staff. We get reports from maintenance as well, because we have our own maintenance departments, Part 145 and Part Camo. So these are involved in our safety management system as well as ground handling. So it's quite important that you get all these reports, and we have one common database where all reports go in. We use the European risk classification scheme to risk assess all the occurrences, which is not always very easy. There's still a lot of work to be done to make it more practicable for the people who use it on a day-to-day basis, but it's a very good starting point of risk assessing the occurrence reports. Now, if you get occurrence reports and you don't do anything with it, you just feed some database and are legal and report to your national authority, well, that's not really the purpose of the reporting. I think the purpose of the reporting is to identify issues that could lead to your next accident, and then do something with this issue. Now, in order to get these reports, because we are basically blind here in our safety offices without the reports that we get from the frontline operators, to get these reports, it's important to involve the people and to show the people that they make a difference. Every single report can make a difference, and it's important that the people keep reporting and sending these reports in so that we can analyze data and come up with recommendations, with investigations, and so on and so forth. So that's, I think, one of the first major points I'd like to say is people are at the core of the process.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's about, as you say, you're in the safety office or in the organization generally, you're blind without that intelligence from the rest of the organization, the operational part of the organization, and you're kind of relying on them. You design a system and you hope everything works in a particular way, but it's only when frontline staff feel comfortable enough to tell you what the difference is between the way you thought things were going to work and the day-to-day reality. Can you actually use it to do you actually have an idea what the risks are you perhaps don't understand or you didn't know quite as much about? And that if we make the if people don't, I guess the first part of this is making people feeling safe enough in the organization that they can report in the first place. I guess that's the first step, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think people need to have confidence in your system and confidence in the people that run the system. It's all a people thing. We are working together with so many different people, and it's important that the trust in the safety office and the trust in the reporting system is there. If you don't have that trust, your reporting level will go down. So it's quite important that people feel safe to report. And again, it's an interlink with your safety culture. One element of your safety culture is certainly a just culture. And I know that you will do another podcast with one of my colleagues on just culture. So that's one element. And people should feel safe to send in their report and not having to fear that they will be blamed or punished based on a report, unless there is gross negligence and so on, as defined in regulation, of course.
Yeah, and I think there's that first step of trust, and then again, something I know you and many other airlines and people I know spend a lot of time trying to do is actually just making the process as easy as possible. Quite often people are reporting occurrences at the end of what's probably a shitty day where something bad's happened potentially, and then if the process then is really, really complicated, they're probably, if they can, or if there's no need for them to do it, they probably won't do it. So I know there are a lot of tools out there that help make this much easier, and you've invested a lot of time and effort in helping make the reporting process relevant and easy for people as well.
Yeah, I think one important thing is, especially for pilots and all the other frontline operators as well, they do long shifts and night shifts and so on as well. If at the end of a shitty shift you still have to sit down and spend half an hour on finding the right form and the right means to report, it won't happen. So it needs to be easy, it needs to be fast, it needs to be relevant. There are so many different various reports that you can do at the moment, bird strike report, turbulence reports, and so on and so on. You don't need all of this all the time, so it shouldn't be available all the time. We have a reporting software where you can actually tick the box for a bird strike report, and then another box opens up and gives you the bird strike data that you have to fill in. This data is not visible if you haven't ticked that box. You will just stay with the essential information, which makes it easier and which prevents you from scrolling down through data that you don't need to fill in.
Yeah.
And then the other thing you said, John, and that's quite important, we very often hear that people are too tired to make a fatigue report after a long shift. So fatigue reporting should be made...
It's like Catch-22, yeah.
Absolutely. So fatigue reports and any reporting should be made easy. It should be made easy to feedback to the reporter, because there's nothing worse than sending something to somebody and not getting this closed communication loop where somebody says, okay, message received. And that's what's killing your reporting if you don't do that.
Yeah, I think that's that first step, isn't it? So somebody's people hopefully trust your system, and the people that are running it, they've found the report and it's easy, and then they submit it, and then that next step is that even just as simple as, I get, most SMS software systems now send a reply back, say, yes, your report has been received, and somebody is now going to read it and see what happens next. And then you have quite a clear process, don't you, for deciding what to do when the reports come in.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do is something, and again, since I have done a lot of work in the industry, we didn't invent this. We always
Yeah,
take the
yeah,
best
it's not
bits
something
and
just you
parts
do.
from
Yeah.
even from podcasts like this. You get one great idea that you
Mm.
can implement in your company. That's brilliant. That's why I love these things. So what we do is when we get the report, we send an acknowledgement. Thank you very much for your report. Report has been received. Sometimes we need to reclassify it because they classify it as a security report versus a safety report or whatever. So these kind of things are done at an initial level. Once the report is then received, we can do three things with it, or that's how we
Yeah,
process the
you set it up.
reports. So we can either log them for statistics, looking at negative trends over time or whatever, just putting them in the database. And then we inform the reporter, and not only the reporter, we inform the complete crew of that flight or the complete shift of that ground shift or maintenance shift or whatever, about what has happened to the report, which is about their shift or their flight. So we feedback and say, hey, thank you very much for your report. It's going to be put into logged for statistics. It's in the database. We will make an analysis, and if necessary, and we have more of these reports, we will then take action and do an investigation or whatever. So that's the first step. Yes.
And I was going to say, maybe it's worth mentioning at this point that you don't just then, make statistics. You do statistics and share that on a monthly basis, were you telling me? So people can see that, yes, this isn't a problem now, but when it does, they'll see that. And that's
Absolutely,
key part of the
absolutely.
feedback.
So what we do for all our reports, we send a monthly report out to all staff. And in this monthly report, we have all the occurrences, all the reports that have been closed, that have an answer. So they see the report and the answer and the closure that has been done with it. And we put a graph in it with the safety performance indicators. So we give them the indicators, basically a statistical graphic, which
Yeah.
tells them we had so and so many this events and so many of that and so on. So that's what we do every month as feedback to everybody, because I think it's nice that you feedback to the one flight or the one shift only, but the next shift or the next flight to the same destination might have the same problem. So we need to learn from each other, and that's why it's important that everybody knows about all the other things that have happened as well. So that's quite important to us. But coming
That's
back
cool.
to
Yeah, you
yeah.
were saying about the second
Yes,
thing that you do there.
absolutely. So coming back to the three things that we can do. So look for statistics is the first one. We can do an assessment. Assessment is basically most of the reports that we received, about 2/3 of the reports are assessments. So basically, it's like a cargo net remained open or any of these things. We send an assessment to the station or to a crew member to get more information on what has happened, and then be able to say, okay, well, maybe adjust the risk, or maybe better understand what has happened, or just maybe say, okay, well, if this has happened, why don't you send a memo to all your staff so that everybody does it because you had it a couple of times already, or something like that. And then the ultimate one is doing a full-blown investigation. This is happening. We have a must if it's an accident or a serious incident. We absolutely must do an investigation according to our procedures. But we can also decide to do an investigation based on some criteria, and some of these criteria are the frequency, the risk that we attributed to the occurrence. Do we see it as a precursor to an accident or incident? In which case, we will do an investigation to prevent an accident from happening, of course. So these are the three things that we do with the reports when they come in. They go into the database. Obviously, the investigations are only done by trained investigators. We have a couple of trained investigators in each department. We have specialist investigators for maintenance, for ground, and for flight ops to really get the best out of it, because it's important that the people understand what they're talking about. And then, obviously, when all of this is done, we are discussing all of this in our safety quality action groups with the various departments and the safety quality review board to brief the upper management about what the outcome is.
And then once that process is finished, you feed back again to those involved and to the wider company on the
Ab-
investigations as well. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
Once this is done, we have an annual safety review, which is a nice little document. I have one here. I can actually show it to you. So this is our annual safety review. It's
Oh
a,
wow.
it's a nice little booklet of 300 pages, which contains all safety data. So this is the annual review that goes to everybody in the company. So everybody can have a look in there. How many events did we have? How many investigations? The risk cases we have done. What's our top risks? What's our lowest risks? We are using the key risk areas from the ESCS to actually classify our risks. So we are doing analyses on fire, smoke, and fumes, mid-air collision, and so on, to see if we have any precursors, descriptors that feed into these categories, into these key risk areas. And based on that, we feed towards our upper management. And we take, industry documents like the EPAS, the European Plan for Aviation Safety, our national plan for aviation safety from our National Aviation Authority, and what we create is our what we call the Airline Plan for Aviation Safety.
Oh wow.
So
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is
So it makes it
basically
real.
the same as the EPAS, only on our airline level. So we are looking at all our data, all the feedback we gave, all the feedback we have received, and based on that, together with the nominated persons in the Safety Quality Review Board, we define high-level actions and our safety priorities for the coming 3 years.
And how often do you review? You do review that, I guess, on a regular basis. Do you throughout
Yes.
the year?
The annual review is done once a year, but
Yeah, yeah.
obviously once a year is not enough to identify negative trends and so on. It helps you, but we have a monthly safety review meeting where we do the monthly part of that work. And we have 2 monthly reports that are being sent to the accountable manager and to the nominated persons, which basically gives them the occurrence trends, which give them the risk management trends, and basically it's a shorter version of our airline plan for aviation safety. And what we do as well, we have FDM monthly reports that go to the fleet chiefs, because the fleet chiefs and the training department might need to adopt some of the processes of the procedures based on the data that our engineers in the flight data monitoring department are actually identifying.
And I guess I'm sure when maybe you start a new route or you maybe get a new fleet or something happens, then I guess you feed then the management of change process into all of that system as well, and it all kind
Absolutely.
of closes the loop as well.
Absolutely. So the management of change process is also in the airline plan for aviation safety. We have basically, again, John, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm not clever enough to do that. But when I look at the EPAS, our APAS is more or less the same structure as the EPAS. It's, of course, way smaller. But we have operational issues. We have upcoming issues. What we added is sustainability. The risk of sustainability, and again, the actions that we took there are the actions that we took out of the safety forum from last year, which has a whole bunch of actions that are available. So why reinvent the wheel and waste time trying to invent something if it's out there and you can use it?
And I think, and actually, when I think of a practical example, I remember probably last year before, when we did the promotion on Medicanes, is actually it was yourself and 2 or 3. I remember, I think 2, 3 other airlines who'd seen it in your own data, your own reporting, who brought that to one of our collaborative meetings to say, well, with the impact of climate change, we've seen an increase in these types of events. And then that fed through our system, and then we did some follow-up actions, and we ended up with also then much more work in terms of looking at the monitoring of impacts of climate change at an EASA level. I think it's a great example how reports, not just the reports that people in Luxair or in any airline submit to you that feeds into the decisions that you make as a company, but then how, by different companies being involved in all these collaborative activities, it really shapes the European and in some cases the wider global aviation system, because there's this body of real data from frontline aviation workers that, I think a lot of people maybe think, well, it's just my report, it's just one thing. but it's knowing that actually it's part of something much bigger that really can almost change the world. I think that's a really exciting
Yeah.
thing in a sense.
And giving that example, you might be happy to hear that the safety forum next year will be about weather.
Excellent.
So
I'm
we're
looking forward.
continuing the work.
I'm looking forward, hopefully, to coming to this one. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great, and I think climate change is. Yeah, I think it's a great example that we've seen. You know, Medicanes was one example, but it's a great example of a continually evolving risk that we see in that process.
Yeah.
And in term, go on. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, if you have seen what's happened in the Mediterranean last week, with the weather, so you know that it's spot on.
Yeah, and actually we were talking. I know this week this will tell people when give more of an idea about when we recorded the podcast. Yeah, I know we were talking today about now the flooding in Skiathos and the bad weather in Malta, and I know there are probably a few operators dealing with some real challenges over the last 24, 48 hours, particularly charter and travel airlines flying to places in some of these Greek islands. But it shows the example of the more you know about your operation, when suddenly there's a new, not say a new risk, but when something happens in the world, that actually having pilots or whatever people in your organization who can tell you when something difficult happened, if they can feel then, well, actually it didn't work as we expected it to, and they feel they can report, that's so important to then hopefully make things better the next time around.
Yeah, and imagine what it does to the individual pilot or ground crew or whatever who made the report and later on sees that the industry is picking it up and that the industry is making changes based not only on his report but on his report as well. So
yeah, indeed. Yeah, I think it's certainly something we're trying a lot more through this, these kinds of discussions, the magazine that we do, and all the other things, all the other collaborations, to really kind of promote more. All these reports came from all these different people across Europe, and now the EPAS has changed in order, on a particular topic, and there are lots of big strategic actions because of reporting. In the same way, the decisions that are made for the EPAS rely on the reports that people in organisations give, and without that, and then the collaborative work that that you're so involved in, without that, people like you bringing all of this knowledge and intelligence, we wouldn't be able to, we'd just be guessing at, are we solving the right problems, and really understanding it. So it's really important. Well, thanks very much. Hopefully everybody found that really useful. I know certainly, I hope there are lots of safety managers. If you don't have an airline plan for aviation safety, maybe it's maybe there's lots of people going, oh, an airline plan for aviation safety. Maybe it's something we could we could develop here's the EPAS and show an airline plan for aviation safety template or something as a follow-up.
Absolutely.
Certainly something I've taken away as something we could do. So wonderful. Well, thanks for joining us, and look forward to seeing you in person again soon. And thanks to everybody who was listening. Hopefully you found that really interesting and useful. Join us next time. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.